You know how they say a new U.S. president has 100 days to make their mark?
Hmm.
Well, stepping into a new leadership role in the business world is even more intense. The pressure cooker is often set for just 90 days to really show what you've got.
Yeah, the stakes are definitely sky high.
Absolutely.
These transition periods are just pivotal. It's not just about, keeping your head above water. It's about laying the foundation for lasting success, both for you and the organization.
Right.
What's fascinating is that when leaders stumble early on, it can have this ripple effect that's surprisingly hard to recover from.
And that's exactly where we're going in this deep dive. We're
Yeah.
pulling apart the most effective strategies for navigating these critical leadership changes.
Yeah.
Think of this as your shortcut, learner, to really understanding this essential career skill. We're not just skimming the surface, we're digging into those less obvious insights.
And doing it in a way that won't leave you feeling overwhelmed.
Exactly.
Our mission today is pretty straightforward: to extract the core principles and frameworks that will help you hit the ground running and accelerate your success in any new leadership role.
Mm-hmm.
And our primary source for this is Michael D. Watkins' really influential book, The First 90 Days.
And this isn't just someone's opinion off the cuff, right? Watkins' work is based on years of, well, in the trenches research with hundreds of leaders.
Yeah, across all sorts of industries and countries, it's a real concentrated dose of practical wisdom.
What's compelling, I think, is just how frequently these transitions occur in modern careers.
Oh, absolutely. A recent study indicated that leaders with around, say, 18 years of experience average over 13 significant role changes.
13. That's more often than you might think.
Definitely.
And that doesn't even count those sort of hidden transitions, major shifts in responsibility without the actual title change.
Right. Or think about how much other people moving around affects you, even if your own role stays the same.
Yeah, it's a constant reshuffling of the deck in most organizations, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
What's fascinating here is this idea of the break-even point. That moment when a new leader starts contributing as much value as they're consuming in terms of time, resources, attention.
All that stuff.
Exactly. And interestingly, CEOs and presidents estimate this takes over 6 months on average for mid-level leaders.
6 months. Wow.
So our goal here is to explore how you can significantly compress that timeline.
Because the journey to that break-even point is often full of what Watkins calls transition traps. We're talking about things like, stubbornly sticking to what, worked in the past.
Yeah, the old playbook.
Or feeling this intense need to take action right now before really understanding what's going on.
That action imperative. It's a strong pull.
It is. Or setting expectations that are just impossibly high, or trying to do way, way too much at once.
And then there's the trap of assuming you've got all the answers from day one, or maybe focusing solely on the technical side while ignoring the crucial elements of culture and politics.
Right, the soft stuff that's actually really hard stuff.
Exactly. Or overlooking those vital relationships with peers and other departments. We really want to give you the awareness to steer clear of these common pitfalls.
Because these traps can easily spiral into what she calls vicious cycles, right? Where early missteps damage your credibility.
Making it even harder to learn and gain support.
Yeah.
What we want to help you create are virtuous cycles, where smart initial moves build momentum and lead to greater and greater effectiveness.
So ultimately, whether a transition is successful isn't just about the new leader's inherent talents or, whether they've walked into some impossible situation.
No, the core principle really is that your success hinges on grasping the specific demands of your new environment and adapting your skills accordingly. It's about that fit.
Okay, let's unpack this then, starting with the first fundamental principle. Prepare yourself.
Sounds simple, maybe.
It sounds obvious, but it's surprising how often people jump in without doing this groundwork. It's about more than just, tidying up your old desk.
It's a real mental shift.
Yeah.
That mental break is absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
Think about the example of Julia Gould. She was a rising star in functional marketing, got promoted to lead a cross-functional product development team.
Big step up.
Huge. But she couldn't let go of her old role. She was still deep in the marketing details, trying to micromanage aspects that just weren't her direct responsibility anymore.
Right. Her previous successes, built on that deep marketing knowledge and kind of direct authority, actually became obstacles.
Exactly. The new role required broader influence, collaboration, without that direct command structure she was used to.
And because she didn't adapt her mindset.
She ended up back in her old role pretty quickly, a real missed opportunity, as you said.
Yeah. Julia's experience highlights a key insight. Just because you were successful in one role doesn't automatically guarantee success in a different one.
Not at all. Every new leadership position, whether it's a step up internally or joining a completely new company, presents its own unique set of challenges that demand a different approach.
Okay, let's dig into those specific challenges then. Let's start with promotions. It's what many of us are working towards, isn't it? That recognition.
It is, but it also means stepping into a completely new game, really.
How so?
Well, as you move up, the scope of what you're responsible for just expands dramatically.
Yeah.
So the first key challenge is balancing breadth and depth.
Right, you can't stay in the weeds on everything.
Exactly. Where you used to focus on the fine details, you now need a much wider perspective. But you still need to know when to dive deep selectively.
Okay. What else changes with promotion?
Then there's rethinking delegation. You
Yeah.
can't just keep assigning tasks the same way you used to.
It's not just tasks anymore, is it?
No. As your team grows, becomes more complex, you shift from delegating individual tasks to overseeing entire projects, processes, maybe even whole business units.
That's a big shift.
It is. And the way you get things done changes significantly too. Influencing in Sun differently becomes critical. Well, your positional authority, your title, often becomes less important than your ability to build strong relationships and navigate the political landscape.
The politics.
Always the politics.
Yeah.
Decisions become less about top-down directives and more about understanding and, well, navigating complex stakeholder interests.
Communication must change too then.
Oh, definitely. Communication needs a serious upgrade. You need to communicate more formally, perhaps, establishing new channels to reach wider audiences,
Right.
and importantly, stay connected to what's happening on the ground without, disrupting the established hierarchy. Think town halls, broader emails.
Empowering your direct reports to cascade info.
Precisely. And finally, with that increased visibility comes much greater scrutiny. So you need to exhibit the right presence.
Presence. What does that mean exactly?
It's about asking, what does effective leadership actually look like at this higher level? What kind of personal leadership brand do you want to project? These are crucial questions to consider early on.
Okay, that covers promotions. Now, let's switch gears and talk about onboarding into a new company. That sounds like a whole different beast.
It often presents a different set of hurdles, yeah. Like David Jones found out when he joined Energix, a rapidly expanding wind energy company.
Tell us about David.
So David was a highly skilled engineer, strong track record in a very process-driven global manufacturing firm, very structured environment.
Okay.
He was brought in as the new head of R&D at Energix with a mandate to bring more structure and discipline to a company that had, frankly, thrived on a more informal, consensus-oriented culture.
Uh-oh. I can see where this might be going.
Right. He quickly identified areas he felt needed improvement, inconsistent processes, project specs that were too vague. He was confident he could implement the Duraway, his old company's method, at Energix, but he soon hit a wall, particularly with the senior management committee and their incredibly slow, consensus-based approach to decision-making.
A culture clash.
Exactly, a major culture clash. David's attempts to introduce more rigid, process-driven changes were met with significant resistance. And his relationship with the CEO, who'd initially championed the need for change, started to cool.
Yeah.
As Watkins puts it, joining a new company is a bit like an organ transplant. If you don't adapt thoughtfully, the organization's immune system can reject you.
That's a powerful analogy, and research backs this up, doesn't it? HR folks often see onboarding from outside as much tougher than internal promotions.
They do. You're dealing with unfamiliar informal networks, navigating a completely new culture, trying to establish credibility as an unknown entity. They're all significant hurdles.
So how do you overcome these hurdles? Watkins must have some advice.
He does. He outlines 4 key pillars of effective onboarding. The first is business orientation.
Meaning understanding the whole business.
Pretty much. Developing a broad understanding beyond just your specific area.
Yeah.
The financials, the products, the strategy, the operating models, how performance is evaluated, the big picture.
Okay, pillar 1, what's next?
Pillar 2 is stakeholder connection. It's essential to build productive working relationships quickly, not just up and down, but especially sideways.
With your peers.
Absolutely. And those key people in other departments whose cooperation you'll inevitably need. You don't want to be meeting your neighbors for the first time when there's a fire.
Good point. Pillar 3.
Expectations alignment. No matter how clear you think things are from the interviews, it's critical to proactively check and recheck expectations with your boss and other key stakeholders once you're actually in the role.
Because things might look different on the inside.
They often do.
Yeah.
What was discussed during hiring might not fully align with the day-to-day realities or shifting priorities.
Makes sense. And the final pillar.
Cultural adaptation. And this is often the most intricate challenge. It's about understanding the unspoken rules, the accepted norms, the underlying values, the fundamental assumptions that really drive how things get done.
The iceberg thing, right. What you see versus what's underneath.
Exactly. Watkins used the analogy of a culture pyramid, visible symbols and language at the top.
Like dress code or jargon.
Right. Then deeper norms and behaviors in the middle, how meetings run, how decisions are made, and the core assumptions and values at the base, what's truly valued.
So you need to figure out things like how influence is really gained.
Yes, and how meetings are typically run. Are they decision forums or information sharing? What's valued in terms of execution versus planning? How is conflict handled openly or behind the scenes?
How are people recognized? What's the balance between focusing on the ends versus the means?
All crucial questions. And adapting to these cultural nuances is also critical when you move between different units within the same company, sometimes called inboarding, and definitely in international assignments. The culture can vary wildly even within one organization.
Okay, this is really helpful framing. So what are some concrete steps you can take to really prepare yourself? Let's get practical.
Right. First, establish a clear breakpoint. Even if the handover of responsibilities isn't perfectly clean, create a mental line in the sand.
Like use a weekend.
Exactly. Use a weekend, maybe a short break, to consciously let go of the old role and fully embrace the new one. Actively think about the necessary shifts in your mindset and approach.
Okay, step 1, mental break. Step 2,
assess your vulnerabilities. Don't just rely on your past successes. Maybe use some diagnostic tools to understand your natural problem-solving preferences.
Like, am I more technical, political, or cultural?
Precisely. This can highlight potential blind spots. If you consistently score low in, say, the cultural domain, you know that's an area needing extra attention in the new role. Same applies to business functions, finance, marketing, operations. Low scores might indicate areas where your understanding isn't deep enough.
Interesting. It's not just about weaknesses, though, is it?
No, absolutely not. You also need to watch out for your strengths. Remember the saying, if all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Huh, yeah.
The very qualities that made you successful before can become liabilities if you apply them inappropriately now. Like Julia's attention to detail turning into micromanagement.
Right. Okay, watch strengths too. What's fourth?
Fourth, relearn how to learn. Stepping into a new role often means facing a steep learning curve. That can trigger feelings of being out of your depth, maybe even incompetent temporarily.
Which nobody likes feeling.
Nobody. But resist the urge to retreat to your comfort zone. Embrace the need to learn and adapt continuously. Denial and defensiveness are sure paths to, well, derailing your transition.
Got it. Embrace the awkwardness of learning.
Fifth, rework your network. The kind of advice and support you need evolves as you advance. Shift your focus from purely technical advisors to include people who really get the organizational dynamics and political landscape.
Navigators.
Navigators, exactly. And also personal advisors, people who can offer objective perspective during stressful times.
Good advice. Number 6.
Sixth, watch out for people who want to hold you back. This could be a former boss who's maybe reluctant to let you fully transition, or former peers who are struggling with a change in your relationship.
That can be tricky.
It can. Be proactive. Negotiate clear expectations for your transition period and address any potential resistance directly and fairly.
Okay. And finally,
get some help. Don't try to do it all alone. Take advantage of any formal transition programs your organization offers. If they don't have one, be proactive.
Create your own plan.
Yeah, work with HR and your new boss to create a 90-day transition plan. And seek out those natural historians within the organization, the people who really understand its history and culture. They can be gold mines.
Excellent actionable steps. So now that you've laid the groundwork by preparing yourself, the next absolutely crucial step is to accelerate your learning.
Yes, this is about rapidly gaining those foundational insights you need to build your 90-day plan and quickly close that initial window of vulnerability where you're figuring things out.
And this is where Chris Hadley at Phoenix Systems really ran into trouble, wasn't it?
Oh, yes. Remember him? Came from a top software company, immediately declared the existing processes at Phoenix outdated. and started pushing for a complete overhaul based on his previous company's model, the Dura way,
Yeah.
before he truly grasped the existing context or why things were done that way.
Big mistake.
Huge. Chris's experience perfectly illustrates that common error. Jumping to conclusions and implementing changes based solely on your past experiences without really understanding the nuances of the new environment.
Right.
Effective learning in a new role is an investment. And the return on that investment is actionable insights that actually guide your decisions properly.
But there are definitely roadblocks to that learning.
Right. Oh, for sure. There are common learning roadblocks to watch out for. Feeling overwhelmed by the sheer volume of new information is a big one.
I see that.
Getting too focused on the technical details while neglecting the crucial aspects of culture and politics. Or just lacking a structured approach to understanding the organization, kind of learning haphazardly. These all slow you down.
What else gets in the way?
Another significant roadblock is simply failing to plan how you're going to learn, not identifying the key questions you need answers to beforehand, not having a systematic method for finding those answers.
Just winging it.
Pretty much. Also, ignoring the organization's history, not asking, how did we get to this point, can lead to repeating past mistakes or unintentionally dismantling valuable existing structures.
And we mentioned the action imperative earlier, that need to do something.
Yes. That almost irresistible urge to show progress can actually prevent you from taking the necessary time to observe, reflect, and truly learn what's going on. It's a tension you have to manage.
And the classic, coming in with the answer.
Oh, yeah. Believing you already know exactly what needs to be fixed, that's a surefire way to alienate people and make some serious missteps right out of the gate.
Okay, so how do you learn effectively then? How do you avoid these roadblocks?
It starts with defining your learning agenda. This means formulating specific, focused questions.
About what?
About the organization's past. How has it performed? What drove successes and failures? What's the history of significant changes? You need that background.
Okay, understand the past.
Then you need incisive questions about the present. What's the current vision and strategy? Who are the key people? What are their capabilities? What are the critical operational processes?
Where are the risks? Where are the quick wins?
Exactly. What are the potential risks and hidden challenges? And importantly, where can you realistically achieve some early wins to build momentum?
And looking forward.
And finally, questions about the future. What are the likely upcoming challenges? What are the untapped opportunities? What are potential barriers to change? And what resources are available?
And you need to think about culture too, right?
Absolutely. Which aspects of the current culture should be preserved and which need to evolve. And it's crucial to ensure your learning covers all the bases. Technical, interpersonal, cultural, and political aspects. Don't neglect any of them.
Okay, so you have your questions. Where do you get the answers?
That's the next step. Strategically identify the best sources of insight. This includes both hard data financial reports, market analysis, that kind of thing.
Quant stuff.
Right. And the soft information about strategy, culture, politics, the stuff that often resides in people's experiences and perspectives, the qualitative.
Who should you talk to outside the company?
Don't underestimate external sources. Your customers, your suppliers, distributors, even outside industry analysts can offer incredibly valuable perspectives.
And internally.
Internally, make sure you connect with people in frontline R&D and operations, sales and procurement, staff functions like HR and IT.
The people doing the work.
Exactly. Also, individuals who act as integrators between different parts of the organization and those invaluable natural historians, we mentioned the keepers of institutional memory.
Can you start this before day one?
Often, yes. Don't forget you can leverage online resources like LinkedIn, company reports, news articles, and sometimes even reach out to current or former employees pre-entry, depending on the situation.
Okay, so you've got questions and sources.
Yeah.
But just having lots of informal chats isn't the best way.
It's usually not the most efficient or effective way, no. You need to think about adopting structured learning methods.
Like what?
Instead of relying solely on casual chats, consider more systematic approaches. For example, schedule one-on-one meetings with each of your direct reports.
Okay.
Using the same set of key questions for each, like what are your biggest challenges? Why do they exist? What opportunities aren't we grabbing? What do you need to grab them?
Yeah.
And importantly, if you were me, what would be your top priorities right now?
Asking the same questions reveals patterns.
Exactly. This structured approach reveals both consistent themes and divergent perspectives across your team. It gives you a much clearer picture of team dynamics. Then you can follow up with a group meeting to discuss your initial observations.
Are there other structured methods?
Yes, plenty. Things like the new leader assimilation process, which often uses a facilitator, using established frameworks like a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats.
What else?
You could conduct organizational climate surveys, hold structured interviews with people at different levels or functions, run focus groups, analyze the rationale behind past key decisions, do a deep dive into critical operational processes.
Plant tours, market visits.
Plant or market tours, yes. Even running small pilot projects to test assumptions and gather real-world data. Each method has its strengths and is best suited for different learning goals.
So all this learning effort needs to come together somehow.
Right. The culmination should be creating a learning plan. This is where you translate your learning goals into specific, actionable steps. And it should be a primary focus during your first 30 days.
It's a cycle.
Think of it as a cyclical process. Collect information, analyze it for patterns and insights, form hypotheses based on that analysis, and then test those hypotheses through further learning and maybe some initial small actions. Collect, analyze, hypothesize, test, repeat.
And a template helps.
A template can be really useful. Your learning plan template should include specific activities for the period before entry.
Like research.
Exactly. Gathering public info, seeking external reports, initial chats with your new boss, maybe your predecessor if possible, and formulating those initial questions and hypotheses.
Okay. Then what happens right after you start?
Then, soon after entry, your plan should include reviewing detailed operating plans, conducting those structured one-on-one meetings, assessing key working relationships between departments.
Testing the strategy.
Yes, starting to test the alignment between the stated strategy from the top and what people are actually experiencing on the ground.
And by the end of the first month?
By the end of your first month, your plan should involve maybe bringing your team together to share your preliminary findings, analyzing critical external relationships, examining core operational processes in more detail,
talking to those key people,
meeting with those key integrators and natural historians we talked about, and continually refining your questions and hypotheses as you learn more. It's an iterative process.
And you shouldn't do this in isolation, right?
Absolutely not. Finally, don't forget the importance of getting help with your learning. Your boss, your peers, even your direct reports can be invaluable resources.
Yeah, you need to guide them.
You need to be clear about what you're trying to achieve and how they can best contribute. Don't hesitate to ask for their perspectives, especially when navigating new culture or understanding internal politics. People are often willing to help if you ask thoughtfully.
All right, this learning phase is intense but crucial. We've talked about how to prepare ourselves, how to accelerate our learning. Now comes a really critical piece. Match strategy to situation.
Yes, because as Carl Lewin at Global Foods discovered, what works brilliantly in one context can completely fall flat in another.
Tell us about Carl again. He had success in Europe.
Remarkable success. He achieved a fantastic turnaround of the European manufacturing operations using a very decisive restructuring-focused approach. Cut costs, streamline things, very effective.
But then he moved to North America.
Right. Took on a new role leading the North American supply chain and found himself in a very different situation. There wasn't an immediate burning crisis.
Which sounds good, but
somewhat paradoxically, that was a significant part of the challenge. The organization was underperforming, definitely, but there was this pervasive sense of complacency, no urgency.
So his turnaround playbook wouldn't work.
Exactly. Carl's experience really highlights the danger of relying on a one-size-fits-all leadership approach. To be truly effective, you have to answer two fundamental questions.
Which are?
First, what kind of situation am I walking into? And second, what kind of leader do I need to be in this specific context?
And that's where the STARS model comes in.
Precisely. STARS stands for Startup, Turnaround, Accelerated Growth, Realignment, and Sustaining Success. Provides a really helpful diagnostic framework.
For figuring out the situation.
Yes, for diagnosing the specific type of business situation you're entering. Each of these 5 situations has its own unique defining characteristics, its primary challenges, and its key opportunities.
Can you briefly define them?
Sure. A startup is basically building something new from scratch. A turnaround involves rescuing a business in serious trouble. Accelerated growth is managing rapid expansion and its complexities.
And the last two?
Realignment focuses on re-energizing an organization that was successful but is now facing performance issues like Carl's North American situation. And sustaining success is about maintaining the vitality of an already high-performing organization and finding ways to take it to the next level.
The goal is always success, but the path differs hugely.
Hugely. The path you need to take varies significantly depending on the STARS situation. Turnarounds often demand that ready, fire, aim approach rapid, decisive action.
Get it done now.
Right. Whereas realignments and sustaining success typically require a more measured ready, aim, fire strategy, more analysis, more consensus building first.
It's like building versus renovating.
That's a great way to think about it. Startups, turnarounds, accelerated growth often involve a lot of construction, building new things, while realignment and sustaining success are more about building upon existing foundations and, importantly, navigating existing constraints and strengths.
So for Carl in North America, facing that realignment, the challenge wasn't putting out a fire.
No. The main challenge was overcoming that sense of complacency and creating a shared understanding, a shared sense of urgency about the need for change, opening people's eyes to the risks down the road.
That sounds psychologically challenging.
It really is. Successfully navigating any transition involves understanding and adapting to the prevailing organizational psychology in each STARS situation.
How does that differ?
Well, in startups, you're moving from excited confusion to productive direction. In turnarounds, shifting from despair to hope. Accelerated growth needs a transition from perhaps less structure to more discipline.
And realignment.
Realignment demands that shift from denial about the problems to clear awareness. And sustaining success involves counteracting complacency, fostering continuous motivation and innovation. It's about mindset shifts.
And in all of these, history matters.
In every single one, understanding the organization's history, how it got here, is absolutely critical. You can't chart the future without understanding the past.
And this STARS model isn't just for the top boss, right?
No, not at all. It applies at all levels. You might be a new manager leading a newly formed team that's basically a startup at your level.
Or fixing a failing project.
Exactly. Tasked with turning around a struggling project or improving a failing process that's a turnaround in a microcosm, it's scalable.
And usually it's not just one thing.
Rarely. Most real-world leadership roles aren't a pure example of just one STARS type. You'll likely find yourself managing a portfolio of responsibilities that represent a mix.
So you need to diagnose the mix.
Right. Diagnosing your STARS portfolio involves identifying which parts of your responsibilities, specific products, projects, teams, fall into each category. Using a framework or table to map this out helps you strategically allocate your time and effort where it's needed most.
Okay, once you have that clearer picture of your STARS mix, then you can tailor your approach.
Exactly. Then you start leading change more effectively based on that diagnosis. Carl, for instance, recognized that the aggressive top-down approach from the European turnaround wouldn't fly in the North American realignment.
He shifted gears.
Completely. He shifted to a more collaborative, measured approach. He focused more on understanding the culture and political landscape before acting, rather than implementing immediate technical fixes like he did in Europe.
What are the key differences in leading a turnaround versus a realignment?
There are some really key differences. Turnarounds often require a strong emphasis on quickly learning the technical aspects and making bold, decisive moves on strategy and structure. You might bring in external talent with specific turnaround expertise.
Ready, fire, aim.
Ready, fire, aim. Realignments, on the other hand, typically require a deeper understanding of the existing culture and politics. The focus is more on evolving systems, developing existing skills, gradually shifting the culture.
More finesse.
More finesse, and often leveraging internal talent who understand the organization's history and nuances. Ready and fire.
How did Carl apply this specifically?
Well, for Carl, establishing priorities in Europe meant radical cuts, overhauling operations. In North America, his priorities were more about improving existing systems, upskilling the current workforce, and gradually shifting the culture. Slower, more deliberate.
And see him.
In Europe, building his team involved bringing in significant external hires with turnaround experience. In North America, he made a few key changes, but largely promoted from within, building on existing strengths.
What about early wins? They look different too.
Very different. In the turnaround, early wins were visible, drastic actions like plant closures. In the realignment, his early wins focused on using data and external benchmarks to raise awareness, build consensus, and make the case for change internally. Much less dramatic, but equally important for that situation.
The STARS model also affects how you manage yourself, doesn't it?
It has significant implications for managing yourself, yes. It highlights the distinction between what are often called hero leadership styles.
The decisive rescuer.
Right. Very effective, often necessary in a turnaround where quick action is needed, and steward leadership styles.
More collaborative consensus building.
Exactly. Tends to be more effective in a realignment where building shared awareness and buy-in is key.
And the risk is using the wrong style.
That's the main risk. A hero leader might come on way too strong in a realignment, creating unnecessary resistance, just as a steward leader might move too slowly or indecisively in a turnaround, missing critical windows for action.
So good leaders need to adapt their style.
Ideally, yes. Truly effective leaders develop self-awareness about their natural tendencies, practice personal discipline in adapting their style to the situation, and crucially, build teams that complement their own style.
Like Carl did.
Exactly. Carl recognized he was naturally more of a hero leader, so he consciously surrounded himself with individuals who had strong steward qualities on his North American team to balance things out. Smart move.
Okay, one last piece related to stars. Rewarding success.
Yes. This is really interesting. There's a paradox here. Realignment, which Watkins and many leaders consider the most challenging type of situation to lead.
Because of the complacency and subtlety.
Right. It's often the least preferred situation by leaders. Whereas startups and turnarounds, although arguably sometimes less complex strategically, tend to be far more popular assignments.
Why is that? Because the wins are clearer.
That seems to be a big part of it. Successes in startups and turnarounds are often more visible, more easily measured in the short term, saving the company, launching the new thing, and therefore they tend to receive greater recognition of rewards.
That creates a potential problem, doesn't it?
It really does. If we disproportionately celebrate and reward the heroic efforts of turnarounds, are we inadvertently incentivizing crises? Or at least, are we overlooking the often more subtle but equally critical work of realignment and sustaining success?
Preventing the crisis in the first place.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Performance evaluation and reward systems really need to be tailored to the specific star's situation. Measuring success in preventing a crisis or achieving incremental but significant gains in a mature market, that can be challenging. The dog that doesn't bark problem.
Yeah, how do you reward something that didn't happen?
It's tough, but absolutely crucial if you want balanced long-term organizational health.
It really makes you think about what kind of leadership behavior gets incentivized. Does our admiration for the turnaround artist subtly devalue the work of preventing the fire?
It's a really fascinating and important question for organizations to consider.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close, let's quickly recap the 3 core principles we've explored. First, prepare yourself. Make that crucial mental break. Understand the specific demands of your new role, the promotions challenges, the onboarding pillars.
Second, accelerate your learning. Adopt a structured approach. Ask the right questions, past, present, future. Identify diverse sources, use structured methods, create a learning plan, and get help.
And finally, match strategy to situation. Accurately diagnose the context you're entering using that STARS model startup, turnaround, accelerated growth, realignment, sustaining success, and adapt your leadership style and actions accordingly.
Remember, navigating leadership transitions effectively isn't some innate, mysterious talent. It's absolutely a learnable skill.
Yeah.
By mastering these principles, you can significantly enhance your career trajectory and, just as importantly, contribute more effectively to your organization's success.
So now, learner, take a moment to really reflect on what we've discussed. Think about your own current situation or maybe an upcoming leadership transition you might be facing. How can you specifically apply these frameworks, these insights, to your situation?
And to leave you with one final, maybe provocative thought to mull over, building on our discussion about recognizing and rewarding different types of leadership. What kind of STARS player are you naturally inclined to be? Are you drawn to the excitement of a startup or turnaround, or to the complexity of a realignment?
And the key question.
And more importantly, how can you ensure that you're not only seeking out roles that personally appeal to you, but also actively developing the skills and the awareness to excel in the types of situations, maybe those less glamorous realignments or sustaining success roles that might be most critical for your organization's long-term health and stability?
Yeah.
Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.
Thanks for listening. Visit our library and subscribe below for more book summaries. This has been a Sprint Reads production.